Hi everyone, I'm Bron, just in case you don't recognise me. Bit of an ISO day yesterday with hair colour and stuff, but anyway. This is going to be a question and answer time about requeening, and this leads on from a Zoom session that Colin hosted the other day with a couple of club members, and also just the questions that came out of that. So I've omitted bits of answers if those things have already been covered. So if you're listening and you know it's your answer and I'm missing bits, that's why, because it's already been covered. The first question is, why do I need to requeen my hive? And the first answer is, if you have a consistently aggressive hive, working with angry bees takes a lot of the joy out of beekeeping and it really isn't necessary. Or if you have an unhygienic queen. In other words, if the hive isn't being kept clean, if there's chalk brood present, if there's lots of dead bees left inside the hive, and if there's lots of cappings or other rubbish scattered around the bottom board, and a combination of these things, don't just bumper off because there's a bit of dirt in the bottom of the hive. That will happen anyway. If swarming's been a problem in previous seasons, if honey production is low, and that is important to you, if the hive just doesn't seem to thrive with low bee numbers and lots of robbing or pests and diseases, then it's pretty important that you try to get another queen. Answer 2 is from Julian, same question. Why do I need to requeen my hive? Julian says revenge. Nasty hives have nasty queens, so after a couple of nasty experiences, I mark the queen down for replacement. Also, I try to replace every 2 years. From Lorraine, I needed to requeen as my hive was becoming quite aggressive, attacking Duncan while he was mowing and me when I was some distance away from the hive. But after 3 failed attempts to find the queen, which was 6 weeks ago, I still haven't requeened. But the hive's now settled down and is much quieter. So I think she'll be thinking about it next year. And from Stan, hives need requeening to maintain their quiet, productive traits. Another indication of the necessity for requeening is that your bees have become aggressive, which is echoed. This is not to be confused with bees being overly protective when they have little or no nectar coming in, or certain honey types where the hive has no pollen coming in, example ironbark. Also, if inspection of the brood comb shows an uneven pattern or missed cells, this also may indicate that productivity of the hive is dropping off. And his last answer to that is the hives should be requeened as per the apiary code of practice. So have a read of that if you're not already familiar with it. From Steve, in the past I've not been big on requeening, letting nature take its course, letting the hive do that themselves. Having requeened a few times in the last few years, I am now a convert. You can certainly see the benefits in the strength of the hive, productivity, and most importantly, temperament. I also feel we have to work towards our bees having good hygienic behaviour. Oh, and there is another answer, and that is from Rob Franson. If the bees in the hive are aggressive, there we go. If the queen is more than 2 years old, there is a higher swarming possibility, and she has less egg-laying capacity, leading to a weaker hive. And also, if you're wanting a different breed of bee, for example, you may want an Italian. It's got the light golden appearance, and it's a very docile nature. Or a Carniolan, a darker bee, but also docile, but suited to the cooler climate in this area. Okay, if you have any further questions, please feel free to email them to me, and I can answer them or get someone else to answer them. Is it too late to requeen now? I think my queen is dead. Well, as you can see, today is cold, and you probably wouldn't be ideal. If you have a queenless hive and you have more than one hive, joining them may be a better option going into winter. Reassess the situation in spring. From Julian, if you've only got one hive, requeen. I think I'd just combine 2 hives if I thought I had lost the queen at this time of year. Lorraine, I'm not sure if it's too late to requeen, but I would say with this cold weather it's too late to open the hive. Better to leave it be. Stan, yes, I think it's too late now. With the onset of the cooler weather, the queen will be starting to slow down her egg laying. Is a mated queen available? If there is, first check a centre frame towards the sunny side of the hive. If there is no brood, carry on looking for the old queen. Having the brood box open for an extended time will chill and kill the brood. If the new queen is already mated, she is right to go. If she's unmated, it's not wise at this time of year, as the hives are driving the drones out to die in the cold. Sad. The genetic pool in the drone area would be greatly reduced, and it would be a high risk for a new queen to go on a mating flight in bad weather. Very true. It may be better to move a frame of very young brood across from another hive and hope they raise their own queen, but the mating flight would still be risky and lack of drones an issue. It may be better to merge the hive with a queen right hive and do a split early in spring when queens are available. From Steve. I've only requeened in spring and summer. We have had guest speakers at the club who have been requeening in autumn, and they recommend it. If it was my hive, I would look at the strength, in other words, the size of the hive, and the availability of a queen. If it was a strong hive and I could get a queen, I would try requeening. Okay, the answer from Rob. No, it's not too late if you can still purchase a mated queen and install her on a sunny day. If you haven't done anything recently to cause the queen's disappearance, for example, merge two hives into one or remove frames and exclude her without properly checking for the queen, chances are she is still there. Answer 6 is be sure that your hive is queenless, as it may be hard to find a queen in autumn, especially if she has stopped laying for the time being and perhaps she's even shrunk a little to be the similar size to the other bees. And I know that has happened to us a couple of times during the autumn. We've looked for our queen and haven't been able to find her and thought, well, there's nothing we can do about it now. We're just going to have to leave this to the bees. And there were no queen cells and no supersedure cells. And come spring, that hive was perfectly fine. Question 3: what is the best time to requeen if it isn't an emergency? The earlier in spring that you can requeen, the better. Orders should be placed with queen breeders in autumn or early winter at the latest to ensure that you get your new queen as soon as possible. This will give the new queen plenty of time to start laying and raising the colony with her progeny leading into the honey season. From Julian, I usually requeen in spring but have done autumn requeening. Not sure which is best. Lorraine, I would say the best time to requeen is in spring before it has a chance to swarm. Stan, once queens are available, spring through to late February would be my preferred choice of timing. Steve, have had good success in spring and early summer. If it is a small hive, it gives it a chance to grow in size and get enough stores to carry them over winter. And Rob, requeening early in the season, that is October, November, in the local area, is a goal many apiarists try to achieve. The advantage being it's easier to find the old queen due to a low bee population. A new queen almost eliminates swarming tendencies for the season. New queens have a high egg-laying capacity, leading to a strong productive hive. But queens are often hard to obtain due to high demand by beekeepers early in the season. If your queen is in her second year, I find end season requeening also has advantages. No disruption to the hive due to requeening during major early honey flows. The weather is often more suitable late summer. Requeen late summer when honey flow has slowed. The new queen should be well settled before packing down and ready for a good start next spring. Question 4. How do I get rid of the old queen? You will need to kill her, sad but true. You need to dispatch the old queen a couple of days prior to installing the queen cage. Don't be fooled into thinking that because you are told your new queen will be arriving on a certain day, that you can bump off the old queen before she arrives. Any number of things may occur to thwart this plan. It is always best to wait until you have your new queen in your possession. The obvious is that the shipment may be late, and less obvious is that the queen may arrive dead. Answer 2 from Julian, how do we get rid of the queen? Find her and kill her. If I can't find her, I do the old empty on a tarp 50 metres from their current location and observe. After the bees thin out and return to the box, you can usually spot the queen. Lorraine, get rid of the old queen quickly by squashing her. Don't spend time watching her as she might fly off. That's what happened to mine, then we couldn't find her again. That would be most annoying. Stan, most beekeepers lop off her head and drop the body back into the hive. The hive soon picks up that she is dead and then picks up on the smell of the new queen more easily. I haven't heard that one before, but go, Stan. And from Steve, you can place the queen in a jar, take it away from the hive and euthanise it. He has in brackets, foot. Okay. And answer 6 from Rob. To be perfectly honest, this is the best time to get in some queen handling practice. Pick her up between your thumb and forefinger so she is comfortable being held by her head and thorax. Now the difficult part. Squeeze your fingers hard together, this being the most humane way to get rid of her. Take dead queens off site so as not to confuse the bees if they find her on the ground. Well, that's in complete contrast to one of the previous answers, but, you know, perhaps do a little bit of research yourself and use whichever technique you find or you think is the right one. Some say dead queens are a good swarm lure, but it hasn't worked for me. Okay, number 5. What if the weather is too cold or wet to open the hive when the queen arrives? Yeah, it happens. And it happens actually very regularly in spring. You can have lots of beautiful warm days in spring, or you know, your queen's on the way and then she turns up and you have a week of freezing wet days. So yes, this is a very real problem as spring weather can be very unpredictable and very windy in South Gippsland. You can keep the queen and her attendants in the queen cage for up to a week after you receive them. This must be in a quiet, darkish, well ventilated but not breezy place at a mild temperature, inside your home if possible. This allows you to check on the bees regularly. In a linen cupboard with the door ajar is okay, or in the pantry. Just make sure that any marauding pests can't access the bees, as they will naturally be very curious. The bees should have plenty of candy to keep them going for that time, and will just need a drop or two of water on the wire mesh of their cage each day. Keep an eye on candy stores though, or you may find bees buzzing around the pantry. If you haven't ditched the old queen yet, that needs to be done as soon as the weather allows. Wait a day or two if possible before inserting the cage, but if you're running out of food for the caged bees, you will have to speed the process up a bit. From Julian, wait a day or two. Maybe there'll be a few hours of clear weather. If not, you may have to build a shelter over the hive. It's never been a problem for me. Lorraine, if it's too cold to open the hive when the new queen arrives, you could wait a few days until it's a bit warmer, but you wouldn't want to leave it too long. You don't want to compromise the health of the new queen, leaving her waiting. Stan, keep the queen in a warm spot, but don't overheat her, especially if she is already mated, as it affects the viability of the sperm she's carrying. A drop of sugar water for the accompanying bees to feed her and keep her hydrated. Steve, this is the last answer. When she arrives, I place a small drop of water on the mesh and store the queen cage in the pantry, where it will be checked many times during the day. I am of the understanding that you have up to 10 days. You will have to keep an eye on her, especially in warm weather. And Rob, this is the last answer. If the weather is unsuitable to open the hive on their arrival, they can be stored in a dark place indoors at room temperature for a day or two, away from the kitchen, laundry or linen chemicals. Note, install new queen into the hive at the earliest possible opportunity. One thing you do have to remember, if you're holding that queen for any length of time, as Rob has said, is that chemical smells of any kind are not a great idea. Probably the pantry is the best option, or just a storage cupboard of some kind. But anything that's holding any chemicals at all, like under the kitchen sink, I wouldn't recommend that. Or the laundry, no, I wouldn't recommend that either. So yeah, pantry generally is a good option because you haven't got any nasties in there. Okay, so if you've got any questions or comments about any of these questions or anything else to do with requeening, just click on or use the email address below, and that's it. Thank you. See ya.